What a joy and an honor it is to be with you. And my thanks to Kathy and to everybody who has created the beautiful space for this service this morning. And we wish Reverend Jo T. well on her day off, knowing that she is getting exactly what she needs to continue to be invigorated and inviting and inspiring for this glorious community. So thank you all for choosing to be here today. And as was promised, just by way of information, for those who are interested in our workshop this afternoon, Rick Finbow and I are going to be offering animal totems in meditation. And as Kathy mentioned, this is a workshop that we've done around the country in various churches and centers. Most recently, we did it at the first Religious Science Centers for Spiritual Living Conference in Amsterdam. And it was well received. So it's our joy and our honor to bring it to you. And for those who have a little bit more of a structural mind and you'd like to know a little bit more about what's happening, the way that works is Rick does about the first hour or so as a psychic, as a medium, and as an animal communicator. And he has created his own animal totem deck. And so everybody gets to pull their own animal totem card, and we'll do some work around that. And then what we know from working with adult learners is the quicker we can take it from concept into implementation, the longer it'll stick with us. So once we do that work with Rick and he's sharing his amazing gifts, we'll spend some time together and we'll take that into meditation. We'll do a couple of different meditations depending on the timing to help you put that into direct application in your life. So we're starting at 12:15, 12:30, depending how many times I need to pass through the potluck buffet. And we look forward to being with you at 12:30. The energy exchange is $45. And if you haven't had a chance to sign up, no worries. Please just show up. We're going to be in this same beautiful space, and we look forward to being with you. So in addition to having the incomparable Karen with us this morning, we're doing something that has never happened before in spiritual community, and you all are trendsetters and you all are on the leading edge. We have a minister talking about love in church. Right? Never happened before in the history of humankind. So we are going to take a little bit of a different take on that, and we're going to be talking about internal love. Because what we know as those on a spiritual path is, number one, we can't give what we don't have, and that number two, it all starts from within. So the invitation today that we're going to explore is the different elements, the different parts of self-love, and perhaps provide you with some different tools, some of which will be new, some of which are not so new, but maybe you can look at them in a slightly different light and get from today exactly what you need and exactly what you want to continue to support you in your spiritual magnificence. So as a writer, it just brings me joy. One of the things that I love about writing and publishing is alliteration. And that served me well in ministerial school as well, right? Because we have to frequently offer people ways to remember the message that we're sharing. And when I was in the corporate world, one of those things that continues to stick with me is proper prior planning presents powerfully poor performance. Now, you might know another different word or two in there, but for the sake of our sacred community and for the sake of those online, I took a little artistic license there. And so I got hung up in the P's, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to be talking about P's. I'm like, okay, Spirit, help me out here. So today I'm going to share with you Dr. David's 5 P's of inner love. So away we go. Now, one of the things that I so appreciate about my beloved is that he always looks amazing. Whether he's wearing his jeans, whether he's wearing a suit or his tux, or whether he's doing a party or whatever he's doing, he just falls out and it looks extraordinary. And so when we're walking out of the house today, I kind of get one of these. And on most occasions I do pretty well, and I get, you look good, or that looks good today. Today I kind of got, why are you wearing gray socks with a brown outfit? And I said, because it's Halloween and they're my superpower socks. So these are my Batman socks. And what I would invite you into is that we all have a superpower, whether you are aware of it or not in this moment. And that superpower is prayer. So the first P we're going to explore is prayer. Now, you all are here. Again, you are on a spiritual path. You're doing the work, whatever that looks like for you. And I absolutely honor you in that. And the invitation that I'm offering you today is, what if you took that to the next level? Whatever that means for you. What if you prayed before a meal? What if you prayed before a fast food meal? What if you not only prayed when we're beseeching or when we're wanting or when we're needing, but what if we offer prayer in that moment of gratitude, in that moment of kindness, in that moment of thanks? It's great. It makes no difference to Spirit, right? Spirit is always listening and always has our back. So it's up to us to make that conscious connection. You know what I know about prayer, I love the story of Mother, now Saint Teresa. She got her calling when she was just 12 or 13. She had barely become a teenager. She was praying in the garden with two of her siblings, and it became very clear to her that hers was to be a life of service. And she didn't know what that meant, and so she was just with that. And so what she was interpreting was, for her, that meant becoming a Catholic nun and entering the convent. So she did. As soon as she could, and she completed her vows and became a nun. And she knew that her calling was to work with the poorest of the poor, as she identified the people that she was working with in the streets of Calcutta. And as many of us have experienced, being people of faith, being people on a faith path, she had that moment of crisis, a crisis of faith, because the nuns from her convent were in regular touch with her. They recognized her spirituality, they recognized her leadership, and they wanted her to step into a position of leadership within the convent. And so they were in pretty regular communication. She was working with the people on the streets and in the gutters. And she was in that place of not knowing. She was in that place of not knowing what was hers to do. So as she always did, she took it to prayer. And she was praying, and she said, God, what am I supposed to do? What do you want me to do here? Is my work in the convent, helping to train and facilitate more nuns in the world? Is my work here? Is it doing something completely different? Help. I need your ideas. I need your thoughts. I need your inspiration. And once again, her prayers were answered, and she got the same message. Yours is to be a life of service. And her interpretation of that was, stay where you are and continuing serving those who you are called to serve. And her response was, thy will be done. And when she made her transition, all of those decades later, I would submit to you that she didn't set out to create a network of 400 convents around the country, around the world, taking care of people with AIDS and cancer and leprosy and virtually anything under the sun. She never turned anybody away because hers was a life of service. And she was guided and directed through prayer. And the good news, my friends, I was having a conversation with an 80-something friend of mine, and she said, David, I go to a center for spiritual living, and I know we talk about this stuff, and I've been going a long time, and I really don't know how to pray, and I'm really not sure what it means to meditate. I want to be spiritual, and I want to feel it, and I want to do it, and I'm not really sure what that means. Well, what I would offer you is, the good news is there's no wrong way to do any of it. So whatever you think, whatever you know, whatever you feel is perfect for you. my interpretation is sometimes when we pray, we're having a conversation with our acknowledgement of the higher power, whatever that looks like, however we define it. God, Jesus, Buddha, Mohammed, Dr. Seuss, my late grandmother, Bella the Beagle, because God lives in it all, right? It makes no difference to that higher power how we choose to communicate, because Spirit gets it all. So I just invite you into that space. So when we pray, we're communicating and we're talking and we're seeking something, perhaps for ourselves, perhaps for our loved ones, perhaps for the whole planet, whatever that looks like. And when we meditate, we listen. So that's why for me it is, both elements are part of my spiritual practice. I pray, I communicate, I'm co-creating my life with the divine. And when I meditate, I'm just quiet, right? Because if I'm constantly talking and constantly acting and asking, I don't make room to receive the answer. So the first P in looking for that inner love and exploring that is prayer. The second P that I would offer you is passion. You know, in this work, and I know many of you in the work that you do, for lack of a better term, officially or unofficially, it's our honor to be with people, to help people on their path in whatever our walk of life. And for me, when I'm with people, gosh, any number of times I hear them say, David, I'm not sure about my passion. I'm not sure about my purpose. What am I supposed to be doing? What is the higher calling? What is Spirit inviting me into? Whatever the terminology around that, it's around passion and purpose. And as we all know, there has been an extraordinary industry that has been built up all around that, with the books, with websites, with ebooks, with classes, with webinars. Oh my goodness, in whatever modality, however you choose to learn, you can find something about finding your passion. And, you know, for the low price of $699, right? And once you finish that, you know, it's only going to cost you $12,000 for the next 2 years. And plus the people who do that, I'm sure that is their passion. And I honor them in that. And at the risk of short-circuiting an entire self-help industry, what I would offer to you is the work that you are doing right now is your passion. Be with that a moment. You don't need to search anymore. You don't need to take another class. With all due respect to all of my ministerial colleagues, you don't have to go to another service. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Now, to be sure, that doesn't mean that we can't co-create something different tomorrow, right? Because I'm whole, perfect, and complete in this moment, but I want to be a different kind of whole, perfect, and complete tomorrow and next year. So perhaps we're asking a different question. It's not what is my passion, but what am I being called to? And it's a different energy. Can you feel that? It's not a seeking. It's not an I'm not 100% because I don't know. It's acknowledging where I am in this moment and saying, I want to do something a little bit different. I want to co-create. I want to show up different. I want to do something different. That's awesome. That's extraordinary. That's when Ernest Holmes invited us all to be firmly grounded in principle and open up the top, right? So I know I want to be a different kind of minister. I don't know what kind of minister I want to be. Ernest says that's okay. We're on a first name basis. He says that's okay, that you don't have to know the how. You set the intention, and the universe has to respond to what you're putting out there. So if you're looking for your passion, my friends, you've already found it, and congratulations. The third P that I would invite you into is that of power. In the Science of Mind textbook, which is our kind of our go-to book, it's a philosophy, it's a teaching, it's a way of life. In the Science of Mind textbook, Dr. Holmes references power more than 160 times. So it's an important part of his life. It's an important part of our teaching. And of course, with a whole lot of nuances, with a bunch of different definitions, and we say power, and many of our minds go in a different place. And again, we're talking about internal, right? If we're talking about internal love, we're talking about internal power. And I love the story about Ernest Holmes, even when he was talked into creating a church. You know, he was a firm believer, and he was the first one to say, the last thing the world needs is another church. So this was a philosophy, this was an exploration, this was looking for the common thread amongst all of the different teachings of the world. And people said, we want to hear you more regularly. The world needs this information. Can we have a time and a space when we can get together and you can share this with us? So, kind of kicking and screaming, Ernest reluctantly said, okay, and the first Church of Religious Science was born. And his work continued to be one-on-one. He loved working individually with people. And so he was working with a person, and the man before him happened to be working with an addiction issue, specifically alcohol. And so this man was in his story, and he was sharing everything about his story with Ernest. And as a good practitioner, as a minister, he was listening, and he was knowing the higher good, and he was seeing the light of who this person is. And it was getting closer and closer and closer to the end of their time together. And Ernest had a major speech, another sermon, another talk that he was going to deliver. So he really did have a, as we call in the corporate world, a hard stop. He needed to be done when he was supposed to be done. And so this fellow just kept talking. And then it came time for Ernest to do the prayer, right? And anybody who's ever spent any time in church knows that you don't give a minister a platform, let alone a microphone. So Ernest was ready to go on, but he knew that he couldn't. So he's sitting with this man, and he does a prayer with this man. And it's his time to pray. And his prayer is, God, this is Ernest. Need I say more? Now, how's that for standing in your power? Because everything that I'm thinking is already being responded to by the divine, whatever my interpretation of that is. And I can go on and on and on about my story and about the story of the person that I'm sitting with. And if that one power, that one ubiquitous presence is all of there is in, around, and through everything that we know, I don't need to repeat it for the divine. I don't need to repeat it for the person who just told me. I don't need to repeat it for myself because I'm not going to hang on to it. And I just think that's brilliant. Now, I haven't had the power. I haven't been bold enough to try that with any of my clients. But I just invite you into that and what that looks like and what that feels like. Another more current, another more timely story. Again, being a writer and publisher, I love words. I have always loved words. Word of the day calendars and word games, and a lot of the time that serves me, and sometimes it doesn't. When I take people off with my unsolicited feedback, and I'm working on that. But I love the story of a single mom who was doing everything that she could to support her kiddos, as so many single parents do. And she was working 2 or 3 jobs, and she was at school, and she was participating in events, and trying to have some semblance of her own life. And it was just a really interesting balancing act. And so she was participating in something at her kid's school, and she wrote a little piece for a Halloween party. And she got feedback from the teachers and from the students and from other parents, and they said, you know, this is really good. We haven't seen anything like this before. Have you thought about writing as a career? Have you thought about doing this, you know, maybe full time? And, you know, as we sometimes frequently do as humans, she was denying her own good. Oh, no, not me. I'm not a writer. I'm a single mom. I'm a hostess in a cafe, right? So when did we think it was a good idea to start arguing for our own limitations? But that's another talk. So she started playing with that, and she started generating some ideas, and she started writing some things down. And then she started thinking, you know, maybe this is a story. Maybe this is something that's worthwhile. And it started consuming more and more of her time. And she finally got to the point where she had a completed manuscript. And she thought, oh my gosh, maybe this is something that I can get paid for, that'll make my kids' lives better, that'll make my life better. And so she was so wrapped up in the process that she didn't think of anything after the process. And now she had it and she didn't know what to do with it. So she networked in the best way that she could. She did a cover letter and she sent it off to a publisher. And she was waiting and she was waiting, and finally a letter came in the mail. And it was, oh, thanks, but no thanks. And she said, well, that's okay. You know, there's more than one of these in the world. And she sent out 2 more letters and 2 more transcripts. And she got 2 more rejection letters. And she sent out 3 more transcripts and 3 more cover letters. And she got 3 responses that said no, no, and no. So she just kept plugging, and she sent out more, and she sent out more. And finally, all of the rejection was just getting her down. And she was having a conversation with somebody, and they said, oh, well, you should contact my friend of a friend of a friend. You know, we all know how that works. And she's like, well, at this point, I have nothing to lose, and if not, I'll just keep doing what I'm doing and maybe do something else. So she sent off in the letter in the manuscript one more time, and she honestly was waiting for the rejection letter, but instead she got a phone call. And it was from a publishing house, and they said, we would like to meet with you. And she was very excited, and they set the meeting out 2 or 3 weeks in advance. And the day came, and she looked amazing, and she got to the office, and instead of just waiting in the lobby or meeting in a cubicle or another office, they ushered her into the publisher's office. And she was in this gorgeous mahogany-colored office. They offered her tea from a silver tea service. She wasn't quite sure what was going on. She was trying to be grateful. She was trying not to get her hopes up. The emotions were all over the place. In walks the publisher, shakes her hand. Nice fellow. They have a good conversation. He picks up the manuscript, and he looks at it. And he looks at her. And he says, I think we're willing to take a chance on this, but by way of managing expectations, let me share a few things with you. Number 1, you've written a children's book, and children's books are not selling. Nobody's ever gotten rich off of children's books. Keep your day job. Number 2, you've written this book not only for children, but for little boys. Little boys don't read. I was one. And he says, number 3, you are a woman who's written a children's book for little boys. So, you know, some would say we have 3 strikes against us. Nevertheless, I like the story and we're willing to give it a shot. Don't put all of your eggs in this basket. So she's thinking, thank you. Is this good? Is this bad? What are we going to do with this? And then he says, you know, as we think about marketing this book, to that point of your being a woman selling stuff to little boys, I don't think we can use your name as the author. I think you need a nom de plume. And it was in that moment when Joanne became J, and she picked another initial right out of thin air. J.K. Rowling was born. Now that's when I think about power. She was standing in her power. How many dozens or hundreds of people were coming at her from so many different sides saying, you can't do this, you're not a writer, you're a woman, you're a ya, fill in the blank, right? Again, arguing for our own limitations. She stood in her power, she stood in what she knew, and she brought it. And here we are, celebrating 20 years of J.K. Rowling and her work, Harry Potter. And I bet on Tuesday night, if your neighborhood is anything like ours, you're going to see a whole lot of Harry Potter characters. And that is from one woman knowing who she was and who she is and standing in her power. The 4th P that I would offer you is that of presence or present. You know, one thing that we know in this teaching is the only thing that we have is the present. We bless the past, we look forward to the future, and we know what we have is right here and right now. Because time and space are human constructs, so it's all over the place. What we have is the present. And honestly, that's a little bit of a challenge for me. Working with a monthly publication, we left one for you. That happens to be the November issue with Jane Goodall on the cover. So please do take that. Rabbit hole. We know from our research that many of you are interested in sustainability. And with Jane Goodall, we look at sustainability through the lens of her work with animals and our beloved four-leggeds. So please do take that as our gift and be with it, and please let us know what you think. That being said, as a publisher and editor of a monthly publication, those of you who subscribe, the December issue will be in your mailbox next week. I just approved the cover of the January issue. We just did a photo shoot for the February issue, and we're well on our way into March and April. A spoiler alert, in 2018, Valentine's Day, the Feast of St. Valentine, is also the first day of Lent. So I'm interested to see how we're going to celebrate a feast with fasting. If anybody can do it, New Thought people can. Something else that you'll appreciate, Easter falls on April Fool's Day. Easter is Sunday, April 1st. So stay tuned. A lot of ministers are going to have a whole lot of fun with that. But it is to that point of presence. And the story that I would share with you is a relatively new friend of ours is a powerful minister, happens to be in another tradition. And one of the many things that I have already learned from her is whether she is speaking in her own community, whether she is speaking anywhere around the country or around the world, whether she's speaking on a ship, one of the first things that she does is she walks the perimeter of the space. And I asked her, I said, what does that look like? What is that prayer? What is that meditation for you? Translated in my mind, why do you do that? And she was kind enough to tell me. She was kind enough to say, it helps me be present. She said, and it helps me ground myself in the space, and she also clears the energy. She clears the energy of everyone and everything that has come before, creating room for more good, for more expansion, for more dynamism, whatever that looks like. So when I try to put that in application in my life, heading into a busy holiday season, whatever traditions we celebrate, it's getting to be that time of year, and might be time for a family gathering or two. And what research is telling us is whenever we go home, whatever that looks like, is we become that 8-year-old or that 10-year-old. Whether it's with our parents, whether it's with our siblings, whether it's with our own kids, whatever that looks like, we go back to that time and that space. So from that point of presence, maybe the invitation is to start thinking about that now. Whether you know the environment that you're going to be in, if it's your home, if it's a family member's home, if it's a restaurant, are you having house guests? Are you going to be staying in a hotel? God bless you. Just be with all of that and bless that space and bless every one of those beings, because that is what you can do right here and right now. And what do we know? This from the guy who was asked to leave high school chemistry. We do know that every action requires an equal and opposite reaction, right? So if I can change the way that I show up at that family event, if I can change the way that I am present, then everything else has to shift. Whether people know it or not, it doesn't make any difference. Energetically, when I shift, the universe will shift, whatever that looks like, to accompany and accommodate that. So when we say change your thinking, change your life, it's a great slogan, looks wonderful on a bumper sticker, and play with it. Make it work for you. See what happens in your experience by a lot of it is what athletes do. So I was just sharing that we've been working on the February magazine. Well, February also brings us the Winter Olympics once again. So in February, we have the daily guides that are tied to Olympic and sports themes, since they're motivating, since many people enjoy the Olympics and what that looks like. And one of the original goals of the Olympic Games was world peace, among other things. So what if we can do what those world-class athletes do? And we can picture that holiday meal, or we can picture anything that makes us feel a little scratchy, right? I'm not looking forward to that situation. I'm not looking forward to that meeting. I'm not looking forward to that conversation. What if we change our thinking about that? What if we say, I am open to whatever I'm supposed to learn from this opportunity? And what if you learned it, and then from here on out, on this earth plane, your interaction with this person or these people is forever changed? And it's not about me getting what I want. It's about supporting the highest and greatest good for all. I just invite you into that. Play with that, be with that, see what that looks like for you. And the fifth P, for those who are keeping track, I know I'm the only thing between you and the potluck. The fifth P is party. You know, one of my mantras is never postpone joy. When I'm working on a talk or I'm working on something for the magazine and I'm working from my home office and we have some new neighbors and it feels like a whole lot of new little ones in the neighborhood now. And they really enjoy our backyard. And I love them and bless them in that experience. And sometimes my human self turns into a cranky little old man and get off my grass. And then I get to be in that space of their kids. And if I get to be in the space of never postpone joy, who am I to tell them to be quiet, right? So I get to join them in that joy, ostensibly. So, yeah, party. Love it. Always in that space. We had a wonderful opportunity just last weekend to be with our dear friends. And their three kids have all formed a band together. And that is an awesome experience. And so one does vocals and one does keyboards and one does guitar. And they have two other extraordinary musicians who have joined them on drums and bass guitar. And so we joined the whole May family for this amazing opening. You know, I'm the minister, right? So I have extra cash in my pocket for the collection. And I'm speaking to Amy, to one of the singers, and I said, honey, when are you going to pass the hat? She said, oh, no, this is just to thank everybody, and this is just to give us a space to perform and to say thank you, and it's kind of a dress rehearsal for us. And I said, honey, I'm a minister. You even get paid for dress rehearsals. And she chose not to do that, to her credit, and being in her integrity. And it was an amazing family party. And so that was the opportunity to come together. And I come by that, honestly, I have shared before that my maternal grandmother was a chocolate dipper in the days of hand dipping chocolate. And oh my goodness, she always looked like a nurse and smelled like an Easter bunny. And you know, what could be better? So my beloved Grandma Pauline, in her chocolate dipping glory, retired not once, not twice, not 3 times. She retired 4 times from the same job. Okay? So she worked and worked and worked her whole life, her whole career in the old Stapleton Airport. Now I'm really dating myself. There was a Stephanie's candy shop, and my grandmother's picture was a 16 by 20 and as soon as you walked in, sitting at the table. It's the same picture that's actually in the chocolate Bible for the connoisseurs of such things. But anyway, Grandma was getting older, and she decided it was time to retire. Well, somebody got pregnant, and they invited her back part-time, and so she went back, and she worked, and she stayed. And then she retired again. And then somebody got sick, and it was the holidays, and they invited her back, and she worked, and she stayed, and she retired again. And long story short, that old girl got 4 retirement parties. I'm like, Grandma, go you! You know? So, you know, following in that footsteps and trying to learn, right? Trying to learn from past experience, I have the opportunity to work with an amazing team on Science of Mind magazine. And the person who has served as our publishing business administrator, Alan Hubbard, is also a religious science practitioner. And he had been there since the organization moved here in 2009. And Alan, God love him, he just continued to do the work and get it done and crank it out. And he had spreadsheets to manage his spreadsheets. And I do a lot of things well, and that is not one of my gifts. So I really appreciated what he brought to the table. And then he retired at the end of last year. So we brought somebody else on board. We worked with this person for 2 or 3 months, and then we finally let Alan go. And then over the course of this year, This other person got a great new job. She had a wonderful opportunity. So I was in the middle of a whole bunch of stuff, and I invited Alan back from retirement. And, I never knew you could do that before, right? A, I didn't know I could ask. B, I didn't know that he would say yes. So he's back working with us. We're having a great time. And I got to be extraordinarily clear in his first day back in the office. I love you. I honor you. I am so grateful for you. You are serving the higher good. Thank you for saying yes. P.S. You're not getting a second retirement party. So we try to learn the messages along the way. We try to learn the messages on the journey. So those are the 5 P's, my friend. We started with we always go to prayer first. I would like to say that that's always the first place that I go. That is not necessarily the truth as much as that is my intention. So take it into prayer. See what you think. See what that looks like. Whatever that looks like for you. The second P is passion. And guess what? You no longer get to say, I don't know what my passion is, because you're doing it. The third P is power. Stand in who you are, because it's that same power, that same presence, that same spirit that created you, then continues to dwell in you and express as you, is there in every moment. The other thing that I would invite you to consider is when you're putting yourself first, you're putting God first. This is not from a place of ego. This is not from a place of narcissism. And if you don't put yourself first, ain't nobody else gonna. So step into that. Because what I know is that so many of us are extraordinary givers. We are in service and we give to our families and to our friends and to our extended families and to the kids we teach. And we give and we give and we give. And guess what? If we value giving that much, it is incumbent upon us to provide others with that opportunity as well. So if you're a giver, what if you explored being in the place of receiving this week? Because honestly, giving is the easy part. And if we're in a universe and we're always in flow, then we get to be in that place of receiving to keep that flow moving. And that fourth P is that of presence. All we have is the here and now, right here and right now. And the greatest gift we can give is to be present. And so that's why I am so grateful for your time and for sharing this space in this service this morning. And the fifth P, maybe you're really good at it, and maybe you've postponed it for a while, is that of party and joy and celebration. Because that is our natural state. That is what we've come here to do. To connect, to enjoy, to participate. We are human beings, and we don't do well in vacuums or in caves. Bless those who choose to be in caves. I feel the energy, and I'm grateful for them, and that is not my path. So, with that in mind, please join me in prayer. So right here and right now, I am so clear that the only thing present is that which I choose to call God, but that goes by so many names. And I love that, I honor that, I bless that, I lean into that, I allow that to be my truth in this day, in this time, in this space. And as I know that for myself, so too I know that for every being present, whether physically here, whether joining us online, whether through watching the video online, whatever that looks like, we know that one power, that one presence, the Spirit is always present. And in this time, as we move through this weekend of celebration, this weekend of joy, this weekend of Halloween, I just say thank you, Spirit, because every being is indeed has a superpower, and that superpower is prayer. We know that for ourselves, we know that for all whom we love. So we just bless that. And as we think about costumes and as we think about masks, I invite every one of us to remove our cloak of invisibility. We are here to be seen. We are here to be powerful. We are here to be nuanced. We are here to be grateful. We are here to explore glorious community together, whatever that looks like, whatever that feels like for each and every one of us. So I know that as we move into this week, that we are all blessed, that every person on our path is put there for a reason, whether for a moment or a season or a lifetime. And I know that each person is claiming their greatness. I know that each person is standing in front of their mirror and saying, I love me. Because when I say I love me, I am saying that I love that power, I love that presence, I love that spirit that created me and that uses me in the world. So yes, I love myself. And I know that it is that love that is going to continue to rise me as a spiritual being having a human experience and raise all of humanity. Because a rising tide raises all boats. And it is from this place of tremendous thanksgiving and extraordinary gratitude that I simply release this word into the amazing alchemy of love and logic known as the law. I just bless it, I release it, I let it go. I simply let God be God. As together we say, and so it is, and so I am, and so we are.